Welcome to the Start Something Show. Join world-renowned experts, change agents, and everyday folks who have done the amazing. All here to help you start something incredible. Now it's time to step out, live your perfect day, and create a legacy with your host, Tina Dietz.
Hey there, Superstarters. It's Tina Dietz. Welcome to the Backstage Pass. And I am here again with our communications expert, Sharon Sayler, to talk about nonverbal communication, as well as some verbal bits as well, and all across the board on how you can be congruent in the message that you are trying to get across, as opposed to the message that people are actually receiving from you. Sharon is an international communications trainer, speaker, best-selling author of 7 books, and the CEO of the strategic communications firm Competitive Edge Communications. Her one particular book, which is phenomenal, What Your Body Says and How to Master the Message, has been translated into 6 languages and is used in universities around the world. She works with entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, as well as corporations like Delta Airlines and schools like Yale's Graduate School of Management. Sharon, thanks for joining me here on the Backstage Pass again. It's great to have you back.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure.
Yes, very cool. Now, one of the things I love about your work is you often start, we're going to just dive right in here, with a place that many folks would not expect to start with when we're talking about nonverbal communications. Usually people are talking about the color of their suit or, the way they hold their head. And those, might be factors in there, but you like to start in a very particular place that's super powerful. Let's talk about that.
I will absolutely want to preface it a little bit, though. Oftentimes I find that people want to read other people. They're like,
you like to be Sherlock Holmes, right?
Yeah, teach me to read other people. And that's really not very useful. Statistically, the more trained you are, absolutely, it becomes a higher success rate in it. But most people are just guessing and testing. So my work is all around training you to send the messages that you want to send. So there's very little miscommunication, and that way everybody's clear on what's happening. And it really helps the other person get a clear idea of where you're coming from. So regardless of what their body language is doing, as long as you're clear on your intention of, look, I'm going to be as authentic and transparent as I can, it's great. And the first place that we have to show up that way is, it's not sexy or fun. And I hope you don't roll your eyes when you hear this, but it's showing up breathing naturally. Low, slow, complete belly breathing. I like to call it 360 breathing, just like a little baby breathes. The whole back, the rib cage moves when a baby breathes. And that's where our mind is the clearest. That's where words come naturally. That's when our movements are fluid. Breathing is critical, and it's the number one thing that you're judged on when you walk into a room. It's not what you're wearing. You can be kind of a crazy dresser, but if you're walking and breathing comfortably, they're going to go, that's one confident person. Crazy dress, but one confident person. So it really explains why you can go into a group or a networking event and someone quite eccentric can walk into the room and all eyes turn. It's because they're breathing comfortably and they're comfortable in when you hear that phrase, comfortable in their skin, what that means is the person is breathing completely naturally. And so it looks like they have their act together. Even if the butterflies are still sort of flying in the tummy, the best way to get them into formation and to get up to give a public speech or whatever, take some nice deep cleansing breaths and you're good to go.
I love that, getting the butterflies in formation. Yeah.
I had to do that many times. Still do when I give a public speech.
Oh, sure. We all do. I mean, how many times we get on stage, there's still that adrenaline rush that happens. So what's the opposite effect then? If people are breathing kind of high and rapid in their chest, what's the impact of that on the person they're talking to, or even on a whole room or a whole audience?
Well, the first thing impact is on you, that you have activated your fight or flight mechanism, which is going to cause cortisol to soar, all sorts of other stress hormones to soar. And what happens when those soar in your body, you become stiff and jerky. It becomes difficult to find words. Ums and ahs increase. If you have a problem with ums and ahs, you're not breathing right. All you have to do Take a nice few deep breaths and cleanse your brain with getting some more oxygen up there, and the ums and ahs will disappear. Now, if you can imagine, if they see you speaking and you're stiff and you're jerky and your voice is stuttered and maybe you're talking really fast because you've got to gasp for air every so often, you're raising everybody's metabolism in the room because you're just gasping for air, you don't have enough, and so you just keep on going like this, you're not only raising your metabolism, but you're raising the room's metabolism as well. You're activating their fight or flight mechanism, and what happens is you ratchet up, they ratchet up, that ratchets you up. And as you can see, it becomes this upward ratcheting of fight or flight and accelerated metabolism to the point where everybody at the time, it can almost turn to conflict even without meaning to.
Yeah, it's a really nasty negative feedback cycle right there.
And the quick way to stop it, when you see it happening, shift your breathing consciously, notice it. I call it reactive. Most of the body language skills I teach are proactive, but in this case, you can do it reactively as well. So if you see it happening, even if you're not the one who walked in the room breathing high and rapid, you can shift that person as well. Breathe low and slow and comfortably. And little refinement here. Here's the advanced tip. If someone is agitated or there's some volatile information or they're angry, only speak on their exhale. It sounds a little stilted because you're stopping and starting as they go. So you're going to get this sort of stilted stopping and starting. Mm-hmm. It's going to sound odd verbally. But what happens is when you speak on someone's exhale and not the inhale, when you speak on someone's exhale, that's where their body relaxes. The exhale is a relaxation process of the body. The inhale is actually an excitement phase of the body. It's expanding, it's filling up. And what happens is the body gets a little bit excited during the inhale.
That's why we have the word inspire. Inspire means to breathe in.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's where that comes from. Yeah.
And so when we only speak on the exhale, where the body is calming, all of a sudden the other person's unconscious goes, they're so calming to be around. They talk a little funny, but man, I just seem to relax when I'm near them. It's amazing how it works.
That sounds like a brilliant application for working in any kind of therapeutic setting as well. If you're a massage therapist, a chiropractor, a coach, anything in between, a therapist of any stripe, then if you've got a client, especially a new client who might be presenting as somewhat anxious, to make sure that as a professional, our breathing is low and slow so that they catch that. And then even adding on this additional technique of speaking when our client is exhaling to help put them at ease and really enhance the therapeutic process that way.
The other thing to remember too is when we speak only on the exhale, it can be great if you have to ever deliver bad news or volatile information as well. So it's great for that too.
That's a great tip. That's a great tip. Yeah. To deliver bad news, do it when they're exhaling.
Right. And when you're breathing.
There's the rule.
And when you're ready and prepared to breathe completely through it. And one of the tips for that is if it's really volatile information, tell several people, trusted people, friends, colleagues, tell them how you're going to say it, practice it, until it becomes your pass the butter voice.
Pass the butter.
Mm-hmm. You know how you'll just say at their dinner table, can you please pass the butter? It's just sort of a matter-of-fact voice.
Yes, pass the butter. This isn't going to work out.
But when you tell the story enough times that the emotion is out of it, it's much easier to deliver bad news to someone else.
That's very true. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's flat or unemotional. It's simply detached from the height of emotion. So then you can actually make sure, create an intention. We would say we create an intention for the communication and make sure that is that intention is fulfilled rather than being overwhelmed by kind of the default ball of emotion. Is that what you're
Correct.
saying? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
very good. Very good. That is absolutely beautiful. So we pay attention to our breathing and all of the techniques that are associated now with that. And I know there's more to it than that. You speak, I know you speak extensively on this topic, and it's covered extensively in your books and in your coaching work as well. Let's talk a little bit more about our actual gestures and things like that, because I know that I, for one, being Italian, speak with my hands quite often. I speak with my hands while I'm podcasting. I'm doing it right now. So I have to set up my booth so I have room for my hands. But this can often, different gestures send different messages. So what are some gestures that we ought to be paying attention to that are just common gestures that might be misconstrued by people?
Well, great question. First, let me speak to speaking with your hands. It's critically important. Whenever I'm interviewed or do my podcast, Life Interrupted Radio, I stand because number one, it's easier to breathe when you
That's right.
stand. And number two, you better gesture because people, oddly enough, hear gestures. They just know when the body is gesturing. It's a different tone to your voice when you're gesturing than when you're standing or sitting very still. So I'm a big fan of gestures. They help people understand the story. They understand the emphasis you're trying to place on it. And there's nothing wrong with great gestures. There are 3 cross-cultural gestures, though, that I find work. I travel all over the world, and they work pretty well no matter where I've gone. You have to be careful of certain what I call jargon gestures, and that's like the OK sign or the thumbs up sign. Those are the ones, please check out with a cultural liaison, the travel agent, whatever, what those gestures mean, because they sometimes mean very rude words in different cultures. So be sure and check those out wherever you're traveling to.
So, for example, the peace sign in the United States, if you did that and say Ireland, you'd be giving a very, very rude gesture. So
Right.
That's just an example. But you're right, the OK sign, the thumbs up sign, hang 10, all of those, you don't know what you're saying.
Exactly. Multiple meanings. But there are 3 cross-cultural hand gestures that are pretty accurate. The first one is when you're seeking information, you're open for debate, it's about the relationship, is the palms up gesture, meaning the palm is facing the sky. Sometimes I've heard it described as a beggar's palm. I don't like the term beggar because it's really just about building relationships, but it gives people a visual that the palm is facing towards the sky. The fingertips are out from you, and, obviously your arm is connected to your elbow, which is pointed back at you. That's all about relationship. It's about seeking information and sharing good news. When you want to send a message that is firm, that you're trying to say, this is my belief, I want to be very clear that I'm serious about this. There is some room for flexibility, but I'm serious. It's the side palm gesture. So understand that the side of your palm is facing to the left or the right, depending on which hand you're using. That stands for, this is serious. We can talk about it, but I want everyone to know that I'm serious. The third palm gesture that means not open to negotiation is the downward palm gesture. Now here I have to put a little asterisk. Make sure your fingers are together on this gesture. Oftentimes if you splay your fingers and your thumb open, and you do that in a Mediterranean culture or a Northern African culture, it does send some words that we're not allowed to say on radio. So make sure that when you do the downward palm gesture and you're trying to say not open to negotiation, I'm firm on this, make sure that your fingers are tight together. Now, oftentimes I find the problem of miscommunication of these 3 gestures comes up between the side palm gesture and the down palm gesture. Many people have a very hard time being that firm of message of the down palm gesture. It very distinctly says, no, not open to negotiation. Oftentimes people are like, oh, that's so harsh. So they do a side palm gesture. Problem is, the other people go, oh, well, it's serious, but, there's some flexibility here. Let's say you are sending a message to a team member, I'll use the name Robert. And you go with a side palm gesture, Robert, the report needs to be here by Tuesday. And then Robert goes back to you because you've got the side palm gesture. There's open for a little discussion. Oh, not Wednesday? No, Robert, Tuesday. Well, I'll see what I can do. And Robert leaves the room, right? You're like, oh, no. Well, Tuesday rolls around and you go to Robert's desk and Robert says, well, I thought I had until Wednesday. And you're like, Robert, I told you Tuesday. The problem is the hand gesture wasn't definitive. It wasn't a no. No, it's Tuesday. And Robert knows that the side palm gesture means, it's open for debate. And he debated it, thought he won, and left the room, and you're going to get your report on Wednesday.
Okay, so that just shifting the gesture of our hands sends a more congruent message with what we really want. And it sounds like, especially with folks who, I think you and I were talking before the show, and we said, the type of entrepreneurs that both of us work with, like our hearts are bigger than our heads. We just kind of like want so much to make a difference and have people feel good when they work with us that sometimes the boundaries aren't completely and totally firm. So getting comfortable with this idea of setting a firm boundary because it honors the communication and it honors the relationship so that everybody is on the same page, even if we're kind of uncomfortable with the idea of being that firm. Ultimately, if having that conflict or having that miscommunication is going to be harder on the relationship than being firm in the first place.
You are so right. That happens all the time. Blurred boundaries is usually that disconnect between what your mouth is saying and what your body's saying.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have a little bit of time where we could just dip a toe into the conversation around gender and body language?
Oh, sure.
I know.
I love that one.
Well, it's particularly important, and I find it I find it very fascinating to me. This whole area is incredibly fascinating because there's so much to experiment with and to try on and to observe about ourselves for our own growth and development. It's really, this is a whole, for me, I like to think of it as kind of a laboratory. And it's like, it's all these new things we can experiment with. Now, there's been a lot of press, obviously, around women in leadership and this whole conversation around being bossy. And I was very much viewed, as you can imagine, as a bossy girl when I was little, and an adult. But that's another story. There are lots of women that I talk with who have this challenge of feeling like everything has to be softened. Everything has to be, rounded edges. The communication cannot be direct. So are there some nonverbal things that women leaders in particular can do? And I would also say men as well, if they find themselves in this situation that they are perceived as not as strong as they'd like to be as a leader, or they feel like they're kind of being, cut off at the knees. Things we could do nonverbally to send a firmer, stronger message in terms of, being perceived as stronger leaders.
Oh, absolutely. First, we talked about check in with your
Breathing.
body.
Yes.
How are you breathing?
Yes.
The second place is there's a disconnect between what you're saying and what gesture you're using. If you're trying to be very definitive and using an upward palm gesture, people aren't going to believe you. Like, oh, this is just about our friendship. This isn't about the wants and needs. An upward palm gesture is always about relationship. The wants and needs are always about the side gesture or the down palm gesture. So be very clear on your intention of what you're trying to communicate. If you're wanting to be taken seriously on the verbal side, drop all language softeners. Like, well, this may or may not work, or here's an idea. Those are language softeners. They might sound like good opening lines instead of another language softener that's so obvious is, well, I don't know if this would work or not. Forget that kind of thing. Just be definitive on it. And if you really want to be serious and be taken seriously, and it is in a team framework, something like that, use a side palm gesture instead of a down palm gesture. If you're throwing out an idea and you want it to be taken absolutely seriously, use a down palm gesture. Women tend to soften their language more than men, and I say forget it. Get a very clear intention in your head. Know that come up with the right ideas that you're going to share, and get away from any sort of language softener. Just state the idea.
So in a meeting, and there was a very funny article a while back that had famous quotes delivered. I think you saw this too. Famous quotes that were delivered as though it was a woman in a meeting, and the way that women feel like they have to deliver. So it was things like, give me liberty or give me death. And it was things like, well, I'm not sure this is a great concept, but I think this is important that, we should have liberty, or we should die. And I think that's important. It was a whole statement about that. So imagining, these scenarios, how we, remove our power by not delivering the communication in a straightforward manner. I also think that to add on to this, I'd love your opinion on this. Going back to the idea of emotion and or attachment to the communication. So many times in meetings, there is a sense of heightened emotion. Again, coming back to the breathing. This is why this is so important. There's, as a conversation goes on, it may become heightened, and there may become this sense of, I have to get my idea in there, which changes the way the communication is delivered. And so as something like you're trying to get it in there, and it's like, well, we need to do such and such, as opposed to, let's look at how this gets done. And language like that. So the language of bringing people together or inviting people to look at something rather than trying to push in any sense of desperation or need. Do you find that comes up in meeting dynamics a lot? Like needing to get your 2 cents in?
It does. And oftentimes the frustrating part is in a meetings where you deliver your idea too soon in the ideation process. What happens is oftentimes there's a lot of ideas thrown out. And if we deliver our idea too soon, it's easily dismissed, and it's a great idea. And so you get urgent about getting it out there again and getting it heard. So it's important to make sure that you're doing it far enough in the ideation process that people are ready for a solution. If you're the first one out of the gate with an idea, oftentimes it's like, well, what other ways can we do this? And that first 1 or 2 ideas is immediately dismissed. So make sure that you know the team that you're working with well enough. And when they're about ready to shift into making a final decision is when you deliver your idea. And also you want to talk depending on whether you want to be seen as the hero, you talk in I language. And if you want to be seen as a team member, you talk in we language. That's important. The other thing to remember is short always sounds confident. If we have an idea and we explain it too much, it really weakens the idea. I love this about Donald Trump, and all politics aside, I'm just going to point out why people are fascinated with him. It's called, he is the master of what I call the artfully vague. And
yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, I love it. I love the skill. We're not talking about him or his politics here. So please, everyone, set that aside. But next time you hear him talk, listen to him. He's artfully vague. And that allows other people to put their ideas, their concepts into your idea and make it an even stronger, better idea. So remember, short always sounds confident. If you want to know what I'm talking about, his tagline is something like, we need to take back America. It's beautiful. But what does it really mean? It means nothing, actually. But let's say you are, oh, I don't know, anti-union. So yes, we need to take back America from the unions. Let's say you're anti-immigration for what, that's been a hot button.
So you can basically put whatever your ideation is over it as the listener.
Absolutely.
And yet, but it still feels as though he is for you.
Exactly.
It's like a ... We need to take America back ... by doing this.
And the other people put their own beliefs, constructs, and ideas onto it and piggyback on it. And we're off to the races with everybody joining in, thinking that they're all on the same road. But if you took them aside and talked to them, they'd be on very different roads.
Yes, exactly. That's a brilliant, brilliant point. And we could probably have a whole separate conversation about that in terms of branding and branding businesses using that concept. That's really cool. That's really cool. Artfully vague. And I'm sure there's some ways to use that in terms of leadership conversations and communications as well, if we were to spend, a few more days with you in a room in a seminar. So, or something of that nature. Yes? Yes, definitely. Well, Sharon, thank you so much. I just want to recap a little bit here. We talked about breathing and confident full, which you called 360 breathing, and that having a huge impact on not only we are, but how we're perceived and even how the room operates, because it catches. We influence other people through our own breathing. You also said that the breathing will remove some of the ums and ahs. If we allow ourselves to breathe more naturally, the ums and ahs will naturally reduce and disappear. So that was one of your other tips. And then we talked about the three, you said they were cross-cultural, so that means they're fairly universal. Is that it?
Yes.
3 hand gestures that you need to pay attention to when you are gesturing. The palm up, which is for communication and looking for more information, looking for resolution. Was that correct, Sharon?
Yeah, it's always about the relationship.
The side palm, which let's hear you. I love the way you put it, Sharon. So let's have you describe that side palm again.
It's about this is serious, but still open for debate.
And then palm down, meaning like, this is it.
Not
we
open
are
for
firm.
debate.
We are not open for debate. Okay. Coming back to something we said in your show episode too, this is very useful for any relationships. It doesn't have to be in business. This is one of those you want to bring out to your kids and your spouse or your friends or whatever to make sure that you're communicating clearly as well. And I just imagine talking to my kids and using that downward hand gesture when I'm like, you will do your homework now. Yeah. It's not open for debate.
Might be shocked all of a sudden. Why is mom so upset?
Yeah.
So be careful when you're doing it on people that know you really well and you change something very quickly. You might get an odd response like
yeah,
she's never done that before. What did I do?
What have I done? Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, it's controversial to say it, but if you can't experiment on your kids, Oh, yeah, I'll probably get an email.
Or you could be like my kids, Tina. Yeah. They've been knowing that I've done this for so many years that they were growing up and everything, and especially in their teen years when there was some artful negotiation about rules and ground rules. And pretty soon, I remember one time when my son broke one of the rules, and I was doing some negotiation skills with him, and he said, "Would you just stop that and ground me?"
Oh, what a riot.
I was like, okay, fine. So sometimes those closest to you know which techniques you're using when.
Nice. Very nice. And now he's got all those skills to take out into the world. So that's perfect. That's a beautiful thing. We might as well teach while we parent. We're doing it anyway, right? Oh, my goodness. So super starters, you've got a lot to work with here this week. And I also want to remind you that in addition to the links here on the startsomethingshow.com and in your membership section, that you've also got access to going to Sharon's website as well at SharonSayler.com. If you haven't already, go to SharonSayler.com/free. Was this free business? Yes. Body language gift, SharonSayler.com/body language gift, and grab that guide that she has there on the 5 little known things that affect how others see you and the power moves you need to master your nonverbal message. It's a phenomenal start. between that and this and her other books, workshops, everything, you completely can dig as deep as you want into this topic to, especially if you're somebody who is really looking to enhance your work as a healer, as a therapist, as a coach, as a massage therapist, as a chiropractor, as a speaker, or anything in between, anywhere where you're interacting with people. You want to have these skills down pat in your business. So this is a great place to start. Know that you can go deeper and reach out to Sharon as well. And Sharon, thank you for being so generous with your time and your knowledge here on the Backstage Pass today.
Oh, my pleasure. And if I could offer just one other special,
Sure.
just for your Superstarters Backstage Pass, if you go to SharonSayler.com/2 and then the word fur, which is 2FER, you'll be able to get What Your Body Says and a book called Life Short, Live Passionately. Both books, just $10.
Oh, wow. Thank you. That's an unexpected pleasure. Appreciate that. Yeah. Because I know, because I have your book. One of the things I really love about it is how it breaks down the information into specific scenarios and even shows people what the body language looks like. So it's been an invaluable guide, I know, for me, especially as a speaker and someone who works with people, pretty deeply on their business and what they do. So, Sharon, thank you again for joining us here in the Backstage Pass. Thank you for joining us on the show, and we'll have to figure out a way to have you back for something else. Who knows what we'll cook up?
My pleasure. Thank you. Look forward to it.
Me too. All right, Superstarters, you have your mission. Go out there this week and master the message your body is giving. Start with your breath. Take Sharon's advice, go from there, and then go deeper with some other tools as well. We'll see you next time on the Backstage Pass.